Ah, yes! Ah, yes, my friends. Ah, yes. Come back from holiday. It's a little long holiday. Wild holiday. Crazy shit happened. We are back in the Paddock F1. Greeny and the cheese. You know what that music sound means, boys and girls? It means we are on the island of Greentopia, where the beer flows like wine and the wine flows like beer. And the cannabis, oh yes, my friends, it grows as far as the eyes can see. Look at it. Look at it out there. Green and luscious. Take a little whiff. That air smells. That's past. We're not taking a walk to the top of the hill because we ain't gambling yet. But soon, boys and girls, soon. The F1 season is right around the corner. We're back.
We are back, and we are ready for the 2025 season. We missed everyone. Thank you all for everyone who's listening, who reached out. For those who know, I almost didn't make it to the 2025 season, as I ended up in the hospital in the ICU there for a few days. But I made it through, and F that, and that ain't taking me out. So made it. Was in a nice little coma there for a few days. But no, seriously, thank you for all the well wishes and those who emailed and reached out during that, and those who had no idea. Well, now you know, and appreciate it, and just glad to be here. And glad to be getting ready for the 2025 season. Going through 8 new driver lineups. We got a new team coming in this time next year. We'll be talking about a brand new team coming in. We got Lewis wearing red. Hello. That's not weird, right? At all.
It looked pretty damn good, I'm not going to lie.
And I guess we'll start the 2025 season tossing it right back to the Ferrari fan himself, Mr. Cheese. How you feeling about your 2025 driver lineup?
I mean, Lewis didn't look bad. They did that tire test, like a week or two ago, and he wasn't that far behind Lando's time, so he was quicker than Charles. So I'm liking the lineup. Lewis looks good in red. Let's just say that. Look good in red.
Loving Lewis in red. Listen, so many times in sports history we have these late career moves, and they're all exciting preseason, and they end up just not, working out. So how do you think this one's going to work out this year? Obviously, you're super optimistic. Obviously.
Oh, and did you know this as well, dude? So a little extra something here with Lewis. Guess who's back with him for 2025 as his performance coach?
Who is this?
Angela is back.
Oh, yes. We saw that. That was a couple weeks ago. That is not breaking news, but
no, it's not breaking news, but it's I think Lewis took a step back the last couple of years. So new car, Angela's back. Looks good in red. He was quick in red. Let's freaking go, man. Let's go.
Yeah, it's a brand new season.
This is the year that Charles is going to have to step his ass up. Like, really step his ass up.
And Ferrari, in the end, has to look like they made the right move, getting rid of Carlos Sainz for Lewis Hamilton. Yeah. I know, 12 months ago we were sitting here, and you can go back and listen to the episode of us or many other shows, talking about when this broke a year ago that Lewis was going to be going to Ferrari. I don't think anyone thought Carlos was going to have the season he had. I just don't think. You might disagree, but I don't think 12 months ago we were sitting here and thinking Carlos Sainz was going to have the competitive season that he had, and being that competitive against Charles Leclerc. And now that he is, or was, and Williams fans are pretty excited to have Carlos Sainz, I'll tell you that much.
Well, they should be.
That
they
lineup,
should be.
especially after the season he had.
To be honest, it was you knew he was going to have to do. He was driving for a ride, so he had to step it up and just go balls out. He had to go all in, balls out. You're driving for a ride in Formula One. You're driving trying to get a new ride because you ain't in that ride no more. And you also wanted to prove Ferrari wrong for making that decision. It's a lot of motivation for a racing car driver. That's a lot of motivation for a racing car driver.
Absolutely.
So
And
definitely not really wasn't really shocked at all that he had that kind of season. I mean, the Ferrari was way better than it has been last season. So you had that. You had a driver who just had all kinds of motivation.
yeah, motivation. Listen, absolutely 100%. We'll see if that translates over. We'll see if Ferrari made the right decision. Obviously, from a marketing perspective, absolutely. I'm sure they made their money back already selling Lewis Ferrari stuff. They probably made their cash back pretty quickly. If not in the next 6 weeks or so, they will be absolutely have made their cash on Lewis. But is it going to translate into wins? Right? In the end, that's great. That's great. Ferrari's going to make money. But is it going to translate into Ferrari being competitive? And who are they competitive against? Let's talk about. We want to start with Red Bull or McLaren?
I mean, I think you got to start with McLaren.
You know, they were 2024 constructors champions, the defending champions.
Yeah, they were quickest at the tire test. So.
Absolutely, and they're looking good. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri both think they are the A1 drivers for McLaren. How do you think that's going to work out going into the season?
Well, you're going to give them the first little bunch of races, say 5-6 races, and see where the points lay at that point. But I don't think McLaren will make the same mistake they did last year and not putting, one driver above another at a certain point, because they're not going to make that mistake again, because they made that mistake last year, and possibly, Lando could have been his only shot to win a world championship.
Yeah, it might be the only shot he's ever had, because I think we saw down the stretch Lando definitely showed some lack of maturity, just some indicators there. And we've talked about it heavily last season, and we're not the only program to talk about it, that the fire of a champion. He doesn't have that Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, like fire. Max
Verstappen.
He doesn't have that. He's a great driver, one of the best in the world for sure. Proved it last year, but I don't think he has that fire. And prove us wrong. But it seemed like Oscar Piastri has more of that fire in him, in his belly. Yeah. And I think this year is just going to be, I think they're going to almost negate each other out for either of them competing for a championship, especially if McLaren's car is as competitive as it was last year. Of course, especially the second half of the season. So we will see. But McLaren's looking good. The talk around Max Verstappen is no chance of winning number 5. What do you think of Red Bull, their new lineup, getting out from the Perez disaster? And you can look back at it now, it was truly a disaster last season.
Perez last year, I thought of this analogy the other day. Perez was like, I don't know if you've ever been in a life situation like this, but like quicksand. Like one thing goes wrong, then another. So then you start to try and fight back harder. And the harder you fight, the quicker you sink. So you can't move. You can't breathe because you're in over your head because you're in quicksand.
I've never been caught in quicksand, but have you?
Not in quicksand, but in the situation that make you feel like that. Absolutely, in sports. Absolutely, you've had that playing competitive sports growing up, and ice hockey for sure. You know, one thing goes wrong, and then another, and then another, and then the harder you fight, and then the more mistakes you make.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Everyone
you feel like you're in.
It's a mental.
Everyone's
thing.
been. Yeah, it's a mental thing. But it's that's what I think that was more anything. That was the biggest thing. He was like in quicksand because he just kept one thing went wrong, and then he couldn't qualify the car. Then it's just one thing after another just led, and it just got in his head, and from that point on, it was over. Red Bull even gave him the contract to try and give him the confidence boost, like the extension there, and just to try and get him out of that funk. And it just, once you're in that funk, it's over because you're in over your head.
I'll use a different analogy, which is in the famous words of Mike Tyson: "Everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face."
To get punched in the mouth,
and he just got punched right in the mouth, and he could not get out of it. And we see that very true in sports. Listen, I was thinking of the time at summer camp when I was a kid when I got caught in the lake. And I was trying to get out of the lake, and there was a snake by my leg in the lake there, and I started freaking out. And the more I freaked out, the more I sunk my feet in the mud in the lake, kind of like quicksand.
Kind of like quicksand.
Had to get pulled out.
Yeah.
So, same shit. But yeah, he definitely was not able to get pulled out. I think that contract was the as you mentioned, was the extension of the hand to get him out of the quicksand, and it just didn't work. It just didn't work, and maybe his time is up. We see it a lot more in sports now, and not just in racing, but any of the major sports where you see just when you have $100 million. Your lack of motivation, you're not motivated by money anymore. You have to have other motivation. And a lot of these guys growing up poor or growing up, especially depending on the driver, some of these drivers grew up silver spoon, Lance Stroll, and others grew up, not so much and had very little in life. And then you get hundreds of millions of dollars. And the ability to make money in all different types of facets, not just racing anymore when you get to that level, in sponsorships and deals, and you just lose your motivation. And I think that was a big part of it for Sergio Perez. I think he got punched in the mouth, lost his focus, and then it seemed pretty obvious over the last 2 years, just no motivation. The guy's going home to his mega mansion and all the bells and whistles in life, and he just wasn't motivated to be the best anymore. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just the fact that he was never going to beat Max.
The curse of the second Red Bull seat, dude.
It's the curse of the second Red Bull seat. It just doesn't go away. Every time you think it's going to end, it just doesn't. No. And it's amazing Red Bull won so many Constructors' Championships with a second seat driver for so long. That's been so bad. So, it'll be really, really interesting this year between the top three teams. And we haven't even talked about Mercedes yet. I guess they're going to be the number 4 team on our radar this season. Does Mercedes have a chance? And Kimi Antonelli.
Well, we didn't really touch anything much on Red Bull there, but you can never count Max out. Let's just say that.
No, you can't count Max out. You can't, especially not now, especially in the same car. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be a really interesting season, and we'll see also, I'm sure we'll talk about it and hear more about it in the coming weeks. But it seems there's a little bit of feud going on behind the scenes between Verstappen and Christian Horner. It could just be bluster or just some preseason nonsense, or it could be something to it. So I guess we'll see in the coming weeks here if they got anything, if anything real coming out of that. I guess we'll see. Yeah, and of course we didn't mention Liam Lawson, whose numbers were just clearly better than anything Perez put up.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what he does in the big chair.
But testing is one thing. Getting on the track and racing is a totally different thing. So, we'll see what happens. Very, very curious to see what happens with Liam Lawson this season and see if that was the right move as well and not going after Carlos Sainz and putting him in that seat. Because I really do think Carlos Sainz was the guy for Red Bull for that second seat. I really think
Max did not want that to happen because they had their rivalry when they were back at Toro Rosso. So Max did not want that to happen. Max did not want that to happen.
Yeah, I think
that's why. I bet that had a
the
lot to do with the decision.
Well, Max runs that team. He's the champ.
So if Max didn't want that to happen, they weren't going to bring him in. So that pretty much nipped that in the bud.
Yeah, but
I mean,
just
they could have went with. They could also went with Yuki too. So
could have went with Yuki. Obviously, the maturity.
Yuki was definitely
and I think
his last year in that car. That's for sure. Because he'll be definitely looking for another team. Because he's got basically no chance to move up. So
we'll see what happens. I think that might have woken Yuki up. That whole situation that happened where he kind of thought he was going to take that seat and. In his mind, that he was going to get that seat. It was almost like a guarantee, and it didn't happen. And his lack of maturity was a big part of it. And I don't think, obviously, we don't see him every day to day. Obviously, they do, and there's some things that they didn't like about his maturity. And when you're talking about driving, there's so many guys. You have your top 3 to 5. Drivers in Formula One as far as skill, doesn't matter what team they're on. We're talking about skill wise, and internally they judge the skill wise things. And then you got like the 6th to 10th best, or really the 10th to 30th best, and really anyone that's the bottom half of the drivers in Formula One could be replaced by the 10 best F2 or Formula One quality drivers that aren't in Formula One right now. And a lot of them are interchangeable, right? A lot of them are. You got your top guys, and then you have interchangeable parts. And, we'll really see how that goes this year. But I think Yuki, could be the 10th best driver in the world. He could be the 30th best driver in the world. And so the marketing aspect of it is something we don't see. Right? Red Bull needs to be able to market. And I think Liam Lawson in the end is just much more marketable than Yuki Tsunoda would have been. I don't know if Yuki showing up to press conferences
Yuki
20 minutes
brings
late.
More money, Yuki probably brings more money, but to be honest, being the only Japanese driver, that's definitely going to bring a lot of money.
Yeah,
There's also attached
is he
behind
showing up 30 minutes late to every interview they have for him? We don't see that. We don't know that behind the scenes. We don't know if people are going to show up on time to these. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Yeah. Listen, if you're Max Verstappen, if you're Lewis Hamilton, you show up 30 minutes late to an event, you show up 30 minutes late. But if you're Yuki Tsunoda, you don't have that leeway. Yeah. You don't have that. You're trying to build trust with your team because you are a replaceable driver. There are F2 drivers that have had excellent seasons, that have been excellent over the last several years, that I still don't have a seat in Formula One. So that could easily be, even Franco Colapinto coming in last year, who, seemed like he was going to have a seat going forward. They are replaceable. The bottom 10 drivers, and Yuki is in those bottom 10 drivers, and he's got to prove that he's not. So there's probably a lot of that stuff that we didn't hear about. But yeah, good luck to Liam Lawson, wish him the best, and hopefully, I don't know. Who gives a shit about Red Bull? It's all about the red this year. I think this is Ferrari's. I'll end it here. And I think this is Ferrari's best opportunity because you have the Red Bull situation, like we just spoke about. You have the McLaren situation where you could just really, let's see what McLaren does. Let's see what this Oscar Lando situation ends up being. And, Mercedes is still probably the fourth best team out there. So, Ferrari's got a chance. And I don't think Lewis Hamilton's going to be, I think this is his last hurrah here. This is it.
Mm.
This is it. But I'm sure we will get to all the other teams. We will get to Haas 2025 next week. We got Alpine to talk about. We got Aston Martin and all the craziness going on over there. And not so much love from Adrian Newey and Lance Stroll, but I guess we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks as well. We'll see what happens there as we get closer and closer to the season. Any parting words there?
We'll see you guys in a week.
See you guys in a week, of course.
More to talk about. Seb wants back in too, by the way.
There's plenty. Listen, when you got 5 rookies, you got plenty of opportunity for someone to make some noise. Last year it was Danny Rick, and we'll see. We all know that Sebastian Vettel definitely retired on a high note. He was definitely looked good that last season with Aston Martin. So we'll see if he makes a come. But we'll see in the coming weeks as we get closer and closer. And until then, say what you got to say, brother.
Always, stay medicated, my friends.
See you next week. Peace.